and standing by to hear from him. But first, we want to get to our political insider. Lindsay Keith is the third member of our broadcast team tonight. She is also live inside the iconic Madison Square Garden. Lindsay, must be a raucous crowd in there tonight.
Hi, Chris. Hey, Lonnie. It is. It is a packed house, as you mentioned, here in the Garden. When I was trying to get into the venue, you just had crowds wrapped around. Also, people got here yesterday at 10 a.m. Some people reportedly sleeping in sleeping bags because they didn't want to lose their place in line. And, you know, it's interesting because Donald Trump, we only have 9 days to go left here, and he is not in a swing state, but he is in his home state of New York. It was very important for him to do an event here in the Garden. He's always wanted to do an event here and really show the country how things are changing, how people are moving away from the Democratic Party and their ideals. As he will likely say, someone like former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is scheduled to speak as well, obviously saying why she left the Democratic Party, saying that they will always back the blue. That's what you just heard from Congresswoman Stefanik, really saying the differences between Republicans and Democrats here and these final days, this crunch time. Also, this event is really kind of a pep rally of sorts. People come from all over the country. Some people from upstate New York, which is more red, also from Staten Island. People coming here really to kind of get juiced up in these final days here until the election.
You know, Lindsay, it's interesting that he is choosing to do this in Madison Square Gardens here with just 9 days left. You would think that they would be battling, going in the battleground states, the ones that seem so important. This was sort of a strategic risk here because in New York in 2016, he lost by 21%. In 2020, he lost by 23%. But he is there tonight, and look at the crowd there. I think this strategic move paid off for you, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's notable. A Republican has not won the state of New York since Ronald Reagan in 1984. And of course, he pretty much swept the entire country, winning almost every single state, 49 states. And so really, this was a risk in the final days. I think after today, you will see Donald Trump really crisscrossing the battleground states as his schedule shows. But today is a different day. It's a different tone. If you talk to some people in his party, in the campaign, they really show this reflects that Donald Trump is trying to have fun. They actually feel like they're in a very good place, even though this race is neck and neck, as the polls show. As we talked about earlier on our show in the week, the momentum is shifting away from Kamala Harris. Again, anyone's game at this point, but we saw both the candidates in Texas on Friday, and really they've been kind of using events like these. We saw Kamala Harris with Beyonce kind of using the state as the backdrop and the crowd as the battleground state. And also, this is really an event to get media attention, to really trying to get a press moment and win the day, as they say on a campaign. And no doubt Donald Trump is winning the day today, because where's Kamala Harris? She's actually in the swing state of Pennsylvania, and she's actually kind of going neighborhood to neighborhood, something people have been asking her to do. But all the attention right now is on this rally at Madison Square Garden. It's not a swing state at all, as we've been talking about.
Lindsay, we want to point out that Speaker Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives, is now at the podium there behind you. But I also want to give our viewers some perspective on the latest polling. According to the New York Times Siena College poll of registered voters in the state of New York, Vice President Kamala Harris is now leading the former president by 19 points, 58% to 39%. You see the polling here. Just last month, Harris was leading 55% to 42%. So she is widening her gap there.
Lindsay, what do you make of those numbers? That's a kind of a surprise there.
The House has been the only firewall in Washington.
Yeah, it definitely is a surprise, and there's definitely concern, as they call it, bedwetting or sweating in the Democratic Party, that they're concerned that in a time when she should be peaking, obviously she's only been on the campaign trail since July, that really she should be gaining the momentum. She's been in this race much shorter than Donald Trump, and really they're seeing the opposite happening. There's concern there. As I talk to swing voters out on the campaign trail, or voters at all, they really still think that she hasn't done enough to define herself, and that's what a lot of this was about. Many people, even though she was vice president, didn't know enough about her, and people feel like right now her closing argument is more about Donald Trump than it is about herself. Time will tell if that's a winning argument or not, but right now there is concern that she should really focus on the economy, on abortion, some of those things that people are coming to her side for. If you look at that divide between the economy, it was something that when Joe Biden was at the top of the race, I believe it was a 12 to 15% gap. She has really narrowed that. And one of the reasons that people see that, it's only about 8 to 10 point gap now. People say it's because she has really empathized with people, something that analysts and strategists have been asking Biden to do for some time. But as the incumbent, he was really struggling to do that because he wanted to keep pointing out, look how great the economy has become and improved under my watch. But when you talk to the American people, they weren't feeling that way. And he had a challenge empathizing with them, and we've seen quite a contrast with her. But people really also want her to have a better answer to how she would be different than Joe Biden. And she still to this day has struggled to say how she'd be different. And of course, she has to go back to the current president and talk with him. I also will note, it is interesting if you look in these final days, she is not using Joe Biden, the current president, as somebody to stump for her, to go out and campaign for her. I think that this really shows that America is not happy with him as a president. And you look at around even the world, incumbents have not done well post-COVID. If you look at incumbents in other countries, his approval rating is around 39% right now. And so she doesn't want him on the stump for her. And there are even reports out today saying that the White House really wants President Joe Biden in some of those blue states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, where he does well with the middle class, something she's struggling with right now.
So, Lindsay, we've got just 9 days left to go until this election day. This has been an unprecedented election cycle. Tell us about Trump's plan in the final stretch here, which includes an arena tour that he's actually kicking off tonight after this rally.
Yeah, you're really going to see him kind of get in the weeds here in these final days. And like I said, the campaign feels like they're in a really good place. So everything in their mind is really driving home the message on a few things. On the economy, which he is leading on immigration, what he's leading on. He'll probably talk about that. Being in New York City, a state that has really struggled with the insurgence of migrants being brought here, bussed here from border states, has been very frustrating for the state. Even you had the mayor here, Eric Adams, asking for federal funding because it became such a huge issue here. Also, he's going to talk about the trans issue. This has shown to be one of the driving issues, actually bringing men to his side. And we talk about the gender gap in this election, and that's something that really resonates with a lot of these men. They're frustrated with how that's being handled right now, so these social issues. So you'll likely hear those three key messages in the closing days. And then I would imagine that Donald Trump will continue to do some of the things that he's been doing, like going to barbershops, going to McDonald's. The campaign would say having fun, but those are the viral moments that really persuade voters at the end of the day, because they're trying to make a billionaire feel relatable and like he can talk with and help the middle class.
All right, Lindsay, I know former candidate Rebecca Ramaswamy, thank you, is there behind you. You just spoke to him here at our studios. Hey, one of the things I want to point out is that New York hasn't been won by a Republican since then President Ronald Reagan won the 1984 election in a landslide, we know, of course. But this, to me, seems more of a kind of, hey, we want to kick off our final week of campaigning in one of the most iconic arenas in the world. Oh, by the way, it happens to be my hometown. That's what it feels like to me. Am I off there, Lindsay?
Evening of November 5th, when we send Donald J. Trump back to the
Yeah, this is really about having a good time and having fun for Donald Trump. He has always reportedly wanted to have an event in Madison Square Garden, and I think think that this reflects where the campaign feels like they are right now. They feel like their ground game is strong. They feel like the momentum is in their favor. And they also want to draw this stark line between blue states and red states. And even Donald Trump said early on the campaign trail that it's not out of sight for him to win New York. Now, that's pretty unlikely, but there are states like Virginia that polling has shifted in his favor. He may not win it, but it can be very close. And when you see polls, how close they are, neck and neck, I have to remind viewers, if you look back to 2016 and 2020, Donald Trump was never ahead in the polls. If you look at Hillary Clinton, this time she was around 9 to 10 points ahead, and same with Joe Biden, this point in the race. And it was so shocking. We talk about the polls being wrong, but it wasn't because they were just a point or two off. They were 5 to 10 points off. And so now showing it's neck and neck, we've seen that Donald Trump has been ahead in certain polls until Kamala Harris came onto the top of the ticket there. Now people wonder if some of these Trump voters who normally do not participate at as a higher percentage as other voters, if we have almost like this silent majority that is not being polled, it's not being reflected in the polls, where it actually could really be a surprising race. Again, it's anyone's guess right now. If anyone tells you they know who's going to win, they're lying to you, because it is anyone's game at this point. And again, anything can happen. We're still in October. We talk about October surprises. This is something that Kamala Harris is really trying to lean into. Those remarks that came out from Trump's former chief of staff just last week, John Kelly, Marine General, very respected man, coming out and saying that Trump is like a dictator, wants more generals like Hitler had, is a fascist. So these are comments that their side of the left really sees as an opportunity to run within the final days. That's what Kamala Harris is banking on here, that this is going to motivate some of those Nikki Haley type moderate Republicans who aren't comfortable voting for Donald Trump. But I think it goes back to we're seeing these dynamic shifts in politics. If you went back 20 years ago, Chris and Lonnie, really the middle left voted for Democrats. And now Donald Trump has really changed that more than anyone has ever seen. You used to think about Republicans being the country club kind of people and Republicans being the blue-collar worker. And that has really shifted. We even see some unions and a lot of the rank and file really supporting Donald Trump. They feel like he gets them. They like that he's not a normal politician. They like that he has full right take. These are some of the things that resonate with him, that he is not someone who's been in politics his entire career like Joe Biden. That doesn't resonate with them. And so, again, going back to why is it here, I think it really goes to show these kind of tectonic shifts that we're seeing in politics and what's happening within the country.
Lindsay, I want to get to the Real Clear Politics average of national polls right now gives Donald Trump a lead over Harris. But listen to this. You talk about razor-thin margins here. 48.5% to 48.4%. That's a 0.01 percentage point difference, so well within the margin of error, if there was such a thing. Hey, joining us tonight as well is, for this special coverage, we have political advisor and author Sean Pittman and executive director and president of the Daily Signal, Robert Bluey. Mr. Bluey, I'll start with you. We know now more than 40 million Americans have already voted early in the state of New York. The early voting started yesterday? Exactly. So what does that tell you about this race?
Well, that shows that the American people are highly engaged, just as they were in 2020. And this is on pace to, again, set some records. I hope that Americans do participate. I mean, they should have a say in their country's future. And what better way to do that than show up at the ballot box and decide who's going to win? I think it also reflects the fact that both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, have really emphasized the importance of early voting. You have not traditionally seen Republicans do this. Donald Trump himself has been skeptical in the past. That changed in 2024, and Republicans have made serious efforts to make sure that in all of those swing states and other states that they're getting the people out to vote early.
So, Sean, we're in the final stretch of this election here with 9 days left. How do you think each candidate is faring at this point?
I tell you, I think each candidate is doing what they're supposed to do, right? I think all of them are giving their final call, trying to connect with those voters that they know will vote for them, who will show up for them. You know, they're trying to emphasize those issues that are kitchen table issues and that people care about the most. They both are, this is the time to secure your base in a way that you know you got them, but you want to make sure that they know you need them, right? So they're both doing that, and they're both doing that very, very well. I will say this. I think Donald Trump is a hard person to run against. And while I think Kamala Harris is doing exactly what she's supposed to do, I think Donald Trump is a different kind of candidate that can do almost anything and still press forward with the people that will be supportive of him. So we're in that final stretch. I don't think we're going to see them deviate from what they're supposed to be doing in these final days. But as you've indicated, this is going to be close. This is very close. And so there's going to be a lot to be said on Election Day.
Robert, I want to turn back to you, and I want to talk a little bit about yesterday's rally in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kamala Harris joined on the campaign trail for the first time by former First Lady Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama had I mean, she went out there. She said some things that I had never heard from her before about Donald Trump. Obviously, she's speaking to a pro Kamala Harris crowd there in Kalamazoo at that campaign rally. But how does that resonate with people who are on the fence about, again, it seems hard to believe, but there are people out there who still don't know who they're going to vote for?
Chris, it's a good question. I think that there are increasingly fewer and fewer people who haven't made up their mind. And frankly, Donald Trump has been in the news for basically the past decade. So if you haven't formed a strong opinion about Donald Trump yet, I don't know if Michelle Obama's latest comments are going to sway you one way or the other. But I think that this presents exactly the challenge that Kamala Harris is in. As you pointed out, Joe Biden has a very low approval rating. His policies aren't particularly popular, and Americans say that their personal finances are getting worse, and they're not better off than they were 4 years ago. So Kamala Harris has to strike the balance of what she would do differently without alienating people in her own party, while at the same time going on pretty hard attack on Donald Trump. And that's what you've seen in recent days. I'm not sure it's working. I mean, the polls seem to indicate that the momentum is in Trump's favor. You pointed out the Real Clear Politics national average. If you look at the 7 swing states, Trump has the advantage in all 7 now. So that is not a good sign for the Harris campaign heading into this last week.
Lindsay, you know, we're talking about these undecideds. Only about 3 to 5% of the registered voters are still undecided. CNBC had an interesting data out today. They said that on persuadable voters, right, which obviously is what we're all looking here and wondering about, those who already said they support a candidate, but they could change their mind, 12%. That's very, and then the undecided was 6%. So that puts it at 18% of the people that may still change their mind at this point. What do you think the candidates need to do to try and go after those people that still are undecided? 18%, that's a big percent there.
And before you answer that, just so you know, Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat turned Republican who was actually in this case at one point, is now at the podium there behind you. Sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Obviously, Tulsi Gabbard has endorsed the former president, even wrote a book about leaving the Democratic Party, becoming an independent. Her voice really matters in this election. But I would say it is fascinating, Lonnie, that at the end of the day, you have so many undecided voters in these final just moments that we have left here. But I really think it's for a couple reasons. It's because many Americans are struggling and have been struggling for the last several years under this economy, and so they blame Joe Biden for that. Obviously, we dealt with a pandemic, and you look at the inflation numbers that we had, almost 9% to where we are, just a little over 2 now. Things have drastically changed, but costs have gone up, and Americans are feeling that. They know that under Donald Trump before the pandemic, they were doing pretty well, and they remember that. But some of them aren't comfortable with him as a person. They really struggle with that. But Kamala Harris is also a flawed candidate. Many Democrats were hoping that when Joe Biden dropped out, he wouldn't endorse her, and there would be someone like a Gretchen Whitmer or a Josh Shapiro who would rise to the top. Their favorability was much higher. And so she has really tried to move. She has one of the second highest progressive next to Bernie Sanders in the Senate. And so she has really tried to move to the center to attract some of those moderate voters, again, some of those voters who supported Nikki Haley in the primaries and not Donald Trump. But they really want to hear more from her. And I think that's what they need to do. She needs to do specifically in the final days is talk more about her policies and not Donald Trump. When I talk to voters out on the campaign trail, they really say just that. They're like, I'm tired of hearing about Donald Trump. I don't want to hear about him anymore. And you hear the same from people who are undecided on Trump. They say, I just want to hear what both people are going to do for me. Quit nagging at each other. But really, the reason you brought up Michelle Obama, her final closing message was really about men, trying to convince them to care about women in this country, doing so by voting for Kamala Harris because of abortion rights. She really needs to get some of those black men who are not happy with the Democratic Party right now and energize that base. It doesn't mean that Donald Trump is going to win the black male population, but he may chip away at it more than we've seen in the past. And then energizing some of those voters who supported Nikki Haley and just may not show up. For Donald Trump, he needs to continue to do the work to motivate evangelicals. They are not happy with him on abortion. They feel like he's pandering to the left, and energizing as well women and older people. New polling showed that he is losing support, which he actually had in 2016 with educated young women, and then also people over 65, which is quite surprising.
Lindsay Keefe, Sean Pittman, and Robert Bluey stand by. We're going to take a quick commercial break here on Dr. Phil's Merit TV, and then we'll have much more live from Madison Square Garden in New York City right after this.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, we have legal professionals standing by to let you know how much your case is potentially worth. I'm here with TV personality and spokesman Tom Mustin. So, Tom, tell the viewers at home who should call right now.
Well, Gina, anyone who's been injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person and find out how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. You heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity. Call now.
Injured? You need resources, experience, power.
Call William G. right now. I'm TV's Judge Greg Mathis, and if you think the insurance company is playing games, you're probably right. You need someone whose name they know, a powerful law firm that can get them to pay attention. HelpMeG.com. You deserve every dollar you're entitled to. It could be a lot more than you think.
Click or call right now.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, we have legal professionals standing by to let you know how much your case is potentially worth. I'm here with TV personality and spokesman Tom Mustin. So, Tom, tell the viewers at home who should call right now.
Well, Gina, anyone who's been injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person and find out how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. You heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity. Call now.
Wintertime, I don't even have a wood stove.
Samaritan's Purse, just staging a massive relief effort across the 4 states.
I want to keep this message alive. I want to make noise. I want you to see this, hear it, feel it, know it's happening. They need our support, and most importantly, they need to know we haven't forgotten about. Put them in your prayers and let them know that you care.
Please join Dr. Phil and Michael's stores in supporting Samaritan's Purse amazing work. To do so, you can go to drphil.com and donate to Samaritan's Purse. Anything you give will make a world of difference.
1 year ago, we embarked on an epic journey, breaking ground on the home of Merritt Street Media right in the heart of America. 5 full acres of cutting-edge technology and studios with state-of-the-art lighting and audio, over 200,000 square feet, all space that's dedicated to creating compelling and inspired content. Another crown jewel at the Plex is our cinematic studio composed of LED screens to customize the environment. Imagine having your film or TV show look like it's taking place halfway around the world. Merritt Street Media is the largest new network launch in the last 30 years. We're already available in almost 90 million homes, and you can download the free Merritt Plus app to start watching right now. Be a part of the exciting launch of this groundbreaking new network where you will be challenged, informed, and inspired.
And welcome back to our special report here on Dr. Phil's Merit TV. We are just 9 days out from Election Day, and there is a big rally right now underway in New York City at the iconic Madison Square Garden. And joining us tonight to break down the hits, runs, and errors, our political insider, Lindsay Keefe, as well as our political advisor and author, Sean Pittman, and executive director and president of the Daily Signal, Robert Blue. Sean, I want to start with you this time. RFK Jr., and I can't wait to see the over-under, whether or not he takes his shirt off. And then Dr. Phil, who I assure you will keep his shirt off. All right, Sean, I want to start with you. What do you make of the argument that the American people don't know enough about where Kamala Harris stands on certain key issues?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, listen, she just started this campaign in July. Nobody is saying that's an excuse. It's a wonderful opportunity to run for the highest office in the world. The second thing is there's a lot of distractions that sort of get in the way of you hearing what you need to hear from her. And some of it's her fault early on, not engaging fully in where she would be as a candidate and not where she is as a Democrat associated with the current president. So that's taken some time. But she has been very, when she was initially asked what would the difference be? Well, but she's been able to articulate that she's a different leader, that her priorities would be different. She can't run away from being a Democrat and having certain things that she espouses to, but she can illuminate the fact that she's a leader in and of herself. She has a track record of making a difference, and her priorities are different. And she's been laying some of those out. And a lot of those priorities are where people are, right? The middle class is hungry for help. And she's talking to the middle class. Now, the distractions of running, I said earlier, it's difficult to run against a personality like Donald Trump. And it's very distracting to messages. But that's her, listen, she's got to get through that. She's got 9 more days to do it. And I don't know that she could do it any better than she's doing right now. And I still think while we know people are voting, we don't know what they're voting. And I think that's what's going to happen on Election Day. That may shock some of us.
Robert, both of these candidates are really taking sort of a modern day approach to trying to reach voters. One of the ways is going on podcasts, which is a very effective way to hit millions and millions of people. We saw Donald Trump just sit down for 3 hours with Joe Rogan on his podcast, which does really have a huge reach. Kamala Harris apparently wasn't able to work out on her schedule, but she did another big one called Call Your Daddy or Call Her Daddy. Do you think that this less traditional approach going through these podcasts, do you think that's going to make a difference at the ballot box?
Oh, absolutely. I think that Donald Trump knows that Joe Rogan reaches an audience that probably doesn't tune in to your traditional news outlets. And let's face it, Donald Trump also sat down with Dr. Phil. So, I mean, he is really taking a completely different approach when it comes to those legacy or establishment media organizations. Kamala Harris, I think, has tried to do a little bit of both. She probably gets a little bit more favorable coverage from those traditional outlets than Donald Trump has. So he has good reason to ignore them and go to different avenues. But in terms of Joe Rogan, just specifically, I mean, last time I checked, just a few moments ago, nearly 30 million people have just watched the interview on YouTube alone. So think about those individuals, particularly maybe the young men who tend to be a key demographic of his that might be, have a different perspective on Donald Trump. And they talked about a variety of topics that probably you wouldn't see come up in a traditional setting. So yes, I do think it's a good approach for both candidates to talk to some alternative voices, and particularly in this influencer scenario that we're in, they are the ones that are in many cases driving the headlines.
Yeah, Lindsay, I know you've talked a lot about this as well, these untraditional media approaches both candidates are taking to reach those voters that might not just be watching traditional media there. How do you feel about how the Joe Rogan podcast went and the other podcasts that Kamala Harris did as well?
You know, it's kind of an unknown quantity to date to see how well it works or not, because we're seeing that media is changing. How people consume their news is changing, specifically young people, cord cutters. Most people aren't tuning in 60 Minutes like they used to be, specifically young voters. And so right now, this seems like a great strategy when you can get 30 million people to listen to potentially a 3-hour interview. And also it gives people a different view of the candidate, because when you look at a candidate just giving a stump speech at a rally like this, you don't get the same thing that you get in a podcast interview, specifically when they're 3 hours long. That brings out more personality. You can ask different questions, and people really like to get to know the candidate like that. So I really do think it's a brilliant approach, but it's still unseen how well it works, because this is really the first election cycle that we get leading into this so strongly. Some people have really were hoping that Kamala Harris was getting an opportunity to go on Joe Rogan herself, obviously as the #1 podcast in the world. But I want to hit on something that Shane said as well, because it is so true. Kamala Harris has had a huge disadvantage here. You have Donald Trump, a person who has been on our TV screens for as long as you can remember. He had cameos and tons of movies growing up. And you look at this young generation of voters, they really have not known politics without Donald Trump. He has been on the scene for such a long time. You have The Apprentice, and so you have somebody that's not as well of a known quantity, and she has only been at the top of the ticket for less than 100 days. And so really, this has been a challenge for her. Some people are frustrated with Joe Biden for not jumping out of the race sooner, but to Shane's point, she's doing everything that she can to be known and to get in front of people. I do think there was some criticism that she didn't do more interviews at the beginning, but again, she was trying to stand up a campaign and figure out what she was all about. And so she is definitely, you know, as she says, she's the underdog in this for sure.
Lindsay Keith is live there inside a jam-packed Madison Square Garden tonight. 19,500 people can fit into that arena. I'm told that it was sold out in about 3 hours' time. And so when you see Lindsay's live shot go out, you have to imagine that the technology used behind the scenes is the same technology that everyone inside there taking pictures and shooting video and sharing it with mom and dad are using as well. So, Lindsay, we do appreciate the context and perspective, and I want to stay with you because I do think the way that people consume media is changing, has changed, and will continue to evolve. And I would argue that the same way people consume polling is the same way. And what I mean by that is, and I guess I'll just ask you, you worked for the Mitt Romney campaign. Take us behind the scenes, peel back the curtain, and help us understand how much did polling go into, you know, talking points and what you guys did on the stump? Because I do think there are a lot of Americans out there and they see these polls and they say, well, my candidate's not winning, on to the next poll. Yep, this one, my candidate's winning, I'm gonna go with this one. What are your thoughts there?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that question because polling and pollsters becomes critical to any campaign. But campaigns are not using, I mean, they look at them, but they're not so much using the national polls. They have internal pollsters who do this for a living, who are very detailed, who help give them analysis, almost like focus groups around crafting their message. It's actually one of the reasons right now that Kamala Harris is shifting to this strategy on going against Donald Trump, saying he is unfit for office, leaning into John Kelly's comments, really having this closing argument at the Ellipse on Tuesday, trying to draw this contrast between someone who people should be scared of being in the Oval Office. Her internal polling and strategists show this is what could actually bring more undecided voters to her side. So that was analysis, that was polling internally from the campaign that they're looking at. They didn't just make that idea up out of a hat. They believe this is actually from their polling, from their analysis, what will drive those final people to Kamala Harris in these final days here. And so really, campaigns rely heavily on their internal polls to decide where to go, what's the next stop on the campaign trail, how they're going to spend their time. And so you can look at the candidates in these final 9 days and see where they're going, and that can tell you a little bit about where they may have a problem, where they don't. We just talked about the candidates in Michigan, a state that has shifted towards Donald Trump right now, something that Kamala Harris was winning when she got to the top of the ticket. So there's concern there in that state. You'll probably see her there more. Those blue wall states, this is really what we're probably going to see the campaign, or the election rather, won or lost.
All right, and I believe they just introduced Tucker Carlson there behind you, former Fox News anchor, now does his own show on X, political commentator, news anchor. Robert, I'd like to ask you the same question. What do you make of polling these days, and do we put too much emphasis on polling?
Oh, we probably do, but it's what the American people love to follow. I mean, it's kind of like a sports match. I mean, you see who's up, who's down, and who has the momentum, frankly, heading into the fourth quarter and the final 2 minutes here. And so clearly, there are some things to be aware of. Number one, I think, as you referenced earlier, Chris, the Real Clear Politics average is a great tool for the American people to look at. That way, they're not relying on just one pollster or one news outlet to get all of their information. They have an average, and they can see who is gaining momentum and who may be declining.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, so let's pause for a second. Let's listen into Tucker Carlson real quick.
And just pause for one moment. Imagine you're Donald Trump. You're from New York City. You become famous in New York City. You make your fortune in New York City. And all of a sudden, the leadership of New York City decides they're going to destroy you because they don't like your politics. And so they... Yeah, boo. Imagine if that were you, though. And they try and take everything that you have. They try and put you in prison. They try and put your children in prison. If that happened to you, how often do you think you'd be going back to New York City? How about never? And yet he's here. It's like getting thrown out of a bar. And you think to yourself, well, you know, all my friends are in the bar. And you approach the door, and there's the bouncer like, you're not allowed in here. But from behind the bouncer, you hear the cheers of your friend, come on in! And the bouncer hangs his head in shame. He's embarrassed that he's working for the man trying to keep the most popular person out of the bar. And that's Donald Trump back in the city that produced him with no embarrassment at all, in a room full of his friends. The stones that takes, the bravery that takes, is incredible. Donald Trump's going to win. He's going to win. I know that that's true. Why is Donald Trump going to win? The people he's about to defeat have no idea. And they're panicked. They have no idea why people like Donald Trump. And their first theory was, well, Donald Trump is evil, so half the country's evil also. And that's one of the reasons they spent the last 4 years trying to destroy the country, because they're mad at its voters for liking Donald Trump. How much easier would it have been just to pause for 20 minutes and ask yourself honestly in some silent place, why do people like Donald Trump? And if they had been honest enough to ask themselves that question, they would have come up with the two main reasons, and here's what they are. The first reason that people like Donald Trump is because he likes them. That's why. And it's real. Affection is something you can't fake. I don't care how many times Kamala Harris would tell me she loves me, I don't believe her. I saw her kiss her husband with a mask on. A mask on. That's her version of love. It's fake. It's not real. They spent 10 years telling you Trump is a hater. Do you feel that on him? No, you don't. Because it's not there. I've spent a lot of time with Trump. And there's not one moment I've ever been with him off camera where he's spending his time grousing about people he hates. Ever. He's talking about the people and the country he loves in his private time. Trust me. And people know, in a country that has been taken over by a leadership class that actually despises them and their values and their history, and their culture and their customs really hates them to the point that it's trying to replace them, they know someone who actually has affection for them, and that's Donald Trump. And it's requited. It's requited. They know. When he goes to McDonald's and serves fries, like, he's not faking that at all. That's why that worked. Democratic media consultants are like, how is that working? Because it's real. That's why. And the second reason that people love Trump, and I put myself in this category, it's why I'm here today, is because he's liberated us in the deepest and truest sense. And the liberation he has brought to us is the liberation from the obligation to tell lies. Donald Trump has made it possible for the rest of us to tell the truth about the world around us. And that's the single most liberating thing you can do for people. If you want to enslave people, if you want to degrade them, force them to tell lies. And they have. They forced us to lie about everything at gunpoint, effectively. They put people in prison for refusing to lie. And not just the obvious lies that men can become women, or Vladimir Putin blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. No, honestly, he did. January 6th was an insurrection. They were unarmed, but it was very insurrection-y. Not even the obvious ones, but the big lie. You know what the big lie is? The big lie is that they're impressive. That's what the big lie is. That the people in charge have somehow earned the right to rule over you, and they haven't. And you know that. These are the single most useless people in the United States. They have no skills whatsoever. They have 3/4 of the money, and they didn't earn it. They set up a system precisely for the purpose of awarding themselves wealth and power when it's undeserved. You look at Liz Cheney and you ask yourself honestly, what skill could she possibly have that allowed her to send hundreds of thousands of people to their deaths? Did she earn that? I don't think she did. No fair system would make Liz Cheney powerful. No fair system would make Larry Fink rich. No fair system would elevate someone like Kamala Harris to a presidential nomination. She's never been accused of doing anything useful. She has precisely no achievements. She's a nominee without getting a single vote. She is a metaphor for the system they created to make themselves rich and powerful, and then they have the gall to lecture you, the people who can actually change a flat tire and repair a power grid, who have useful jobs, who pay your taxes and work 40 hours a week, lecture you that you are somehow immoral. And Donald Trump has empowered the rest of us through mostly just sticking around in the face of their hate and abuse and persecution. He has given the rest of us the right to call BS on the charade. No, you are not better than us. No, you are not smarter than us. No, you do not deserve what you have. You probably stole it. No, you're not going to bully me into silence anymore. And I can promise you at this point, 9 days out, when Robert Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and pretty much every high school senior and college shorty girl in the country has come out finally say, yeah, I am for Donald Trump, actually. When the entire country has realized there is nothing embarrassing about this. What's embarrassing is to take a perfectly great country and destroy it, as they have. I'm not ashamed. You should be. At that moment, it's going to be pretty tough for them 10 days from now to look in the eye to America with a straight face. It's going to be pretty hard to look at us and say, you know what, Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan, Malaysian.
We're going to pull out now for just a moment and come back to our panel with Robert Bluey, who's the president of the Daily Signal, Lindsay Keith, our insider, political insider, and as well as Sean Pittman, a political advisor and author. Sean, I want to ask you a question following up on something we heard Tucker Carlson say there. He was talking about New York City and the fact that Donald Trump has come back to New York City for this big rally. It's interesting, just earlier this year, in a criminal trial there in New York City, the Trump team was worried that they would be able to get a fair jury because they felt that the New Yorkers were so against Trump. And yet here he comes back to a sold-out crowd in Madison Square Garden. What message do you think, Sean, Donald Trump is giving not only to New York, but to the whole nation in holding this rally in Madison Square Garden this close to the actual election?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not a Republican strategist, but I actually think it's a risk to be there in this time period when there are battle states that he needs to shore up. And I know that there's some polling that says that he's got them locked down, and if he's believing those polls, and they may be internal polls, then maybe he feels comfortable to go back to New York and say, I haven't given up on you. And so that's sort of an internal thing. But what I want to respond a little bit to what we heard from Tucker Carlson. I think, I wrote in my book called Disaffected that, the main reason for writing the book is that people just don't know anymore what to trust and what to believe. We're in this time where information flows so fast, you don't have the same amount of time to really dive into things. And while that's happening, you're getting different statements and comments and information about simple issues that makes you wonder, like, God, I don't know what to believe. And so you're leaving a lot of the country behind. And now only thing they can make a judgment on is whether they like you or not. And that's sort of where we are. And yes, people like Donald Trump. Yes, there are people who like Kamala Harris. And I think we got to get back to where people really decide that the issues and the way people act and what they say and what they've done matters. And that is a very confusing thing for the average person who has, a job and kids and they don't read the paper every day. They just want reliable information. And I think that's the tragedy of where we are today, that people are disaffected and they don't trust it.
All right. Well, right on cue, Hulk Hogan is ripping off that shirt. And I'm sure he's going to have, like he did at the Republican National Convention, a pro-Trump T-shirt, tank top. There it is right there, right underneath it. We're going to listen in to Hulk Hogan when he approaches the podium. But for now, he's getting the crowd all pumped up like he did back in the 1980s when he would do those big somersaults off of the ring there. And remember those days?
I do.
Hot Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan and the WWE and all that stuff. Let's listen in.
Well, let me tell you something, Trumpomaniacs. Welcome to the house that Hulkamania built. You know something? Usually when I'm in Madison Square Garden, I'm body slamming giants. I'm winning world heavyweight titles, and I'm cracking people over the heads with steel chairs. And the energy in Madison Square Garden is off the Richter scale. But today, Trumpomaniacs, the energy in here is something like I've never felt. The energy of all these Trumpomaniacs is the most powerful force in the universe. And today, this is Donald Trump's house, brother. You know something, Trump maniacs? I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother. You know, when I hear my president and our president, Donald Trump, speak, he sounds for real, brother. He sounds like he has a heart of gold that's all for the USA. But when I hear Kamala speak, it sounds, It sounds like a script from Hollywood with a really, really bad actress. You know, Kamala is responsible for the border crisis, and Kamala is also responsible for inflation. And then you know something? She acts like she's the victim. And then all of a sudden, she flips, she flops, she spins and turns it around and acts like she's gonna be the damn hero. But we all know Trump is the only man that can fix this country today. And with Trump as our commander-in-chief, peace through strength will fix all the problems in the Middle East. You know, I've been coming to this building month after month after month, and I've seen sold-out crowds over and over again for over 40 years. And for 40 years, I've always asked the question, what you gonna do? Over and over and over again, what you gonna do? Well, today, after feeling the energy in this building, I finally got the answer. And the answer is, vote for Trump. So now, I got a couple questions for you. What you gonna do about the border invasion? What you gonna do about inflation? What you gonna do about keeping America safe, brother? And what you gonna do about putting God in our homes, in our country, and our schools? So I guess we're all on the same page. So I got one final question for you. What you gonna do and who's gonna make America great again? God bless Donald Trump. He's our next president.
All right, Hulk Hogan there at the podium there in front of 19,500 people inside the iconic Madison Square Garden in New York City. Of course, the home of birth home for the Republican presidential nominee, the 45th president, Donald Trump. It's our understanding that our boss and the namesake of Dr. Phil's Merit TV is coming up next, so we'll be standing by. We should point out that Dr. Phil has been on a tour across some key swing states. In fact, he spent the better part of last week in Pennsylvania. He loaded up the big Dr. Phil Merit TV bus and was crisscrossing around talking to voters. And if you follow Dr. Phil on his social media platforms, which you should, you'll get a real sense of what he's saying, communicating, and what people around the country want from our next leader.
Yeah, he's really touching a nerve of people wanting both sides to really listen to each other and find that common ground and try and get rid of the divisiveness. He also posted some pictures on his Instagram that I found very interesting, and that is that he spent some time with the Amish people. He was riding in a carriage and speaking to them as well. So he's really trying to hit all different communities.
Spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 days that I've seen on social media. Like you said, kind of talking to people. He's big on meeting people where they are and talking about issues, real people, real issues who are looking for real solutions, I think is the tagline. And so we are under the impression, at least at this point, that he will be speaking next. He was also part of a larger panel with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others, part of Make America Healthy Again. If you watch the Dr. Phil program, he is big on the American family and doing right, doing well by each other, And, you know, this idea of exercise and diet and what's in our food. Just this past week, we had a segment on our news on Merritt Street about food-borne illnesses and things like that. So that's another key important issue that Dr. Phil is tackling as well. That's right. He hosted that event. He was the one asking the questions. And RFK Jr., as you said, was on the panel, who he has also interviewed as well on his own show. All right. And we just got in our ear that Dr. Phil himself is approaching the podium there at Madison Square Garden. Let's listen in as the crowd welcomes our boss, Dr. Phil McGraw.
Well, you guys look just like you do when I'm on TV. Except for you, you look a little different. Listen, I love you guys for caring enough about the United States of America to come out here tonight. Thank you so much for caring enough to come out here tonight. I have to tell you, I love this country. I do. I love this country. I stand up when our flag goes by. I put my hand over my heart when they play our national anthem. And I'm so proud to see so many people take time out of their day to come out here and stand up for this country. And strangely enough, I'm not here just to stand up for Donald J. Trump. Lord knows he doesn't need me to stand up for him. He's tough as an old army boot. He's got lots of enemies, different groups that are scared, and between them, they have impeached him, indicted him, raided him, railroaded him, shot him, and sued him. And where is he? He is still standing. He just keeps on coming because he loves this country too. I can be honest and say, I can be honest because we have free speech in America. I can be honest and say I don't like or agree everything that Donald J. Trump does or says. Come on. Nobody agrees with everything or likes everything somebody else says or does, right? No human is perfect. We don't strive for perfection, we strive for excellence. But you don't have to love everything about someone in order to love them. And the last thing he needs is some celebrity endorsement. What the hell do I know? I know I'm a celebrity to begin with. And celebrities don't know anything about policies or politics. So only difference between me and them is I'm willing to admit it. So why am I here? Well, I'll tell you why I'm here. I'm here to talk to and stand up for the people who have declared their support for Donald J. Trump, or they got found out, or they want to do it, but they're too intimidated. Because you know what happens when somebody in this country says, hey, I'm going to vote Republican, I'm going to vote Donald J. Trump? They get canceled, intimidated, marginalized, excluded, or even fired or boycotted. And you know what that means? In short, that adds up to being bullied. And now we're talking about something I know a hell of a lot about. Now you're in my wheelhouse, buddy. I may not be an expert in politics, but I am an expert about bullying. And bullying is when you seek to harm somebody, you seek to intimidate, coerce, cause distress, fear, risk to their well-being. And it can be physical, verbal, relational, or cyberbullying. And it's always wrong. You said it, my friend. It is always wrong when you bully somebody. And that's what's going on. Now, let me tell you what the critics are going to say when they hear me talking about this. They're going to say, well, now, wait a minute. Come on. Isn't Trump a bully? And let me tell you why the answer to that question is no. Because to be a bully, there has to be an imbalance of power. And when there's not, it's just called a debate. And he's just better at it than anybody else. It's called debating. It's called arguing. It's just, it may even name calling, but it's not bullying unless there's an imbalance of power. And whoever he talks to, they've got a microphone, they got on their big pants, they got a stage, they got everything else. He's just better at it. And the same thing is true. When the Democrats or Harris call him fascist, Hitler, racist, misogynist, or a crook, is that bullying? Well, not really. It's ugly. But with the First Amendment, which we all want to keep, there's no imbalance of power, so it's not bullying. It's just like what he does. It may not be the best use of energy, but when you attack civilians, when you attack a citizen, and you use the power of the internet, you use mob mentality, you incite people to gang up and cause boycotts, then it's beyond ugly. And that's what's happening in this country right now, and that's not okay. There is an imbalance of power there, and it's time that every one of us close ranks. We have to stop this now. It's time that we push back against cancel culture. It's time that we push back against intimidation tactics. And that is exactly the reason that I launched Merit Street Media, which, by the way, we didn't choose the name for that by random. Merit Street Media. This country was built on hard work, added value, and talent. Not on equal outcome, not on DEI. This country was built on hard work. It needs to continue to be built on hard work. And the legacy media has sold out. The legacy media has sold out. And I'll tell you, one night I was sitting at dinner with my wife, Robin, and I was complaining as we were flipping around and listening to the spin on what's supposedly news. And I said, damn, I'm tired of listening to all this media spin and everything. And without even looking up, she said, well, you are the media. Why don't you do something about it? She said, you got bigger ratings than the four of them combined. Why don't you do something about it? Well, as usual, she was right, and that's why I launched the new network, because we want people to think for themselves. You guys aren't dumb. You don't need to be told what to think. You just need the facts. And you're here because you have the facts, right? You're here because you recognize when legacy media edits answers and gives you what they want you to hear instead of the truth. And when they start editing their candidates' answers, they've lost their moral compass. They've lost their way. And I would love to say it's equal on both sides, but I'll guarantee you, when Beyonce, George Clooney, De Niro, and Lizzo come out and say they're for Kamala Harris, when they all come out and say they're for Kamala Harris, did you read anything or hear anything in the media criticizing it? No. But you watch what happens tomorrow morning when people find out I came here to talk to you. You say this in Hollywood and all of a sudden you ain't got a job. The problem is I don't need one. I don't need a job because I got you. And I've got a question for all of us. Have we lost our minds? We have the First Amendment in America where our government has said we will pass no laws to infringe on our freedoms for religion and speech. So that's the law, but we're muzzling each other. What is going on? We have a law that protects free speech, so we start taking it away from each other? Are you kidding me? We can't allow that to happen. We cannot encourage it. And let me tell you something about bullying. Bullies are bad, right? Let me tell you what else is bad. Bystanders. If you are a bystander, if you are watching somebody get picked on, if you're watching somebody get bullied, and you don't do anything about it, you're just as guilty as the bully that's doing the bullying. Am I right? I have talked to so many children in schools that tell me the worst feeling they've ever had is being bullied and feeling alone and abandoned when they are picked on and intimidated, when they wished even one person, even one other kid would step up and say, hey, come sit with me at lunch. Don't sit in a stall in the bathroom and cry your way through lunch and eat alone. We're not going to let you be alone. And it's the same thing with adults. Adults don't want to be cut out of the herd and feel like they're alone. The number one need of all people is acceptance. The number one fear is rejections, and bullies, they prey on that. We must claim the right to our point of view. We must be critical thinkers, and when you see somebody being picked on, then you've got to be willing to step up and say, hey, I'm with you. Don't let that happen. And you've got to know why you're strong on the issues you're strong on. You've got to know why you're strong on affordability and safety and security and the border and family care for men and women and law and order and your core values for your children's education and our military. Know why you're where you are. And when you come to your friends and coworkers being bullied, don't be a bystander. Don't be a bystander. You can't let it happen. When you say you love America, that's a verb. That also means you love Americans. You've got to push back and call out the bullies. You've got to stand with those that have targets in their lives. Targets if they're picking on them by calling their jobs to get them fired. Boycotts or kicking them out of their jobs at church or their groups at church. I've spent 45 years listening to people. And I was just in North Carolina and after the hurricane hit down there. And you know what? I saw neighbors helping neighbors, and not one of them asked, are you a Democrat or a Republican? I saw neighbors helping neighbors, and we need to unify this country. You have the right to vote for who you want to vote for president, and we need to step up and claim it, and we need to stand with each other. There are so many who want to, but they're bullied, so they're afraid to. And let me tell you something. One of the most important days in American history was 9/12/2001. Not 9/11. We all know what happened on 9/11. One of the most important days was 9/12, because on 9/12, we all woke up and we were all Americans on 9/12. If you were an American on 9/12, stand up right now. If you were an American on 9/12, stand up right now. That's who we were. That's who we are. And the difference between winners and losers is winners do things losers don't want to do. And we have to stand proud to help our neighbors who want to vote their conscience and not be afraid. No one should be alone. No one should feel abandoned. No one should have their business boycotted. If you hear somebody's getting their business boycotted, you should get your friends and make sure their business gets doubled. If somebody pulls their advertising from your friend's business, you should let those advertisers know you're going to spend the rest of your life making sure that advertiser is boycotted until they do the right thing. You need to let people know this is over in America. We're going to unify this country. We're going to listen and not be intimidated. We're going to go out and lead by example. Let's quit complaining about what is and start doing something about it. If your neighbor wants to vote the other way, say fine, go vote the other way. I'll love you anyway. Let's lead by example. If they want to do it, let them do it. Love them anyway. But as for you, the collective you, I don't want you to just listen and say, nice talk, Dr. Phil. I want you to march in your life. I want you to march with your beliefs. I want you to not be intimidated. Don't be stopped, and don't just vote. Take 5 people with you. Like I said, the difference between winners and losers is winners do things losers don't want to do. And what they do is take actions toward known outcomes. They deal with the truth. They set goals, and they go after them with passion. And it's time for us to bring it home. It's time for us to bring it home. It's time for us to be winners. Winners, winners, winners. I started by telling you I love this country. I'll finish by telling you I love this country, and I love you for loving this country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. And before I leave, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Senator J.D. Vance.
Well, how about that for a timely, important message from Dr. Phil about respecting other people's opinions as he shakes hands with Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, senator out of Ohio. Dr. Phil saying that he's not there to stand up for Donald Trump. In fact, he said that he doesn't agree with everything that Donald Trump says or does. And in fact, if we were to look in the mirror, who agrees with everything that someone else says and does?
That's right.
Does it ever happen?
That's right. I think it's such a timely message about, you know, the divisiveness that's going on right now in this country. And look, we all need to be able to exercise our right to free speech. We need to be able to vote the way we want to vote. And he says if somebody's going to vote a different way from you, that's fine. Respect it and love them anyway. So I think really important message, not just for the people there in that room, but for everyone listening across the nation.
Certainly one thing that is undeniable is Dr. Phil's love and admiration for the United States of America. He talks about it publicly a lot on his new Dr. Phil primetime show that you can watch right here. If I'd have done one thing differently, though, I would have seized that moment to promote the Merit Plus app. Because if you don't know about the Merit Plus app, there's so much great content that I think that you and your entire family would benefit from if you just take the time to spread the word about the Merit Plus app. J.D. Vance is at the podium now. I want to bring in Lindsay Keith is there at the Madison Square Garden. Lindsay, what was the reaction you heard from the crowd? Because I heard Dr. Phil behind you.
It's where the king, Elvis Presley.
Yeah, people were pretty excited to hear our boss walk out into the garden, chanting his name over and over again to a raucous crowd, a packed crowd. Even the nosebleed seats are packed here. But I think people were really surprised to see him as well and hear his much-needed message right now at a time when we are so divided as a country. And it's really what I've been hearing that voters want when I have been on the campaign trail these last few weeks. Even when I was at Kamala Harris's rally in Kalamazoo yesterday, really people said, we just want to hear about what people are going to do for us. Why do they always have to make it so divisive? Why do they have to tear down the other side? Because at the end of the day, we have neighbors who think differently than us. We have coworkers who think differently than us. And when candidates do this, it makes it almost want to demonize the other side. That's exactly what Dr. Phil was trying to say there, is we have to stop this at the end of the day. And I think it's a much needed message right now in this country. And you know what was interesting as well? There's been a lot of cheering and chanting, and they definitely were cheering and chanting for Dr. Phil, but really listening, I think, to what he had to say, because talking about some of those real issues that Americans deal with every day, bullying, and then also people being afraid. You know, Chris, you talked about this story the other day of people's yard signs being stolen. And I think we're at a time right now when I was just talking to a voter outside whose friend came to the rally. He came from Boston, but he didn't want to go because at the end of the day, he didn't really want people to know that he had come to a Donald Trump rally. That's where we are in America, where people really can't even say sometimes who they're voting for.
Lindsay, stand by, because we have the man of the hour. Dr. Phil is with us now. Dr. Phil, thank you for taking the time. You've just gotten off the stage. You felt the energy of 19,500 people there at Madison Square Garden. Talk to us about the importance of that message right now to that crowd that you gave.
Well, thank you, Chris. I did speak here because my message is we've got to stop being divided. We've got to stop being bullied, and it's time for us to unify. And whoever wins this election is going to be my president. I spoke at this Donald Trump event, and I'll speak at a Kamala Harris event if they'll invite me. I've asked to speak to Kamala Harris over 25 times, and I haven't gotten any response back whatsoever. But I want to speak to her. I want to speak to Vice President Walz. I'll speak to anybody on any side of any issue in this country. That's what I want to do. I'll speak to who will speak to me to get a message to the American people. The message that I wanted to get across here is it's time to quit being so divided. It's time to quit bullying. It's time to start saying we've all got a right to do what we want to do and vote who we want to vote without being bullied and ostracized, and criticized, and marginalized, facing boycotts and that sort of thing. It's just not who we are. That's not what the American people are about, and that's the message here. I didn't come here to endorse Donald Trump. I came here to deliver a message to this country about what we need to get back to.
You know, Dr. Phil, I think a lot of people might have been surprised when they heard your name as one of the speakers here, but you came from a non-political way. I think it was a refreshing approach here, point of view, and really speaking to the people as they say they want to hear in this election, and that is to people to put aside the divisiveness and remember that we're all Americans here. Like you said, that whoever wins this election will be all of our presidents, and that we need to come together. And I think with your experience, all of your years speaking to people, understanding what bullies are all about, you really were able to bring this home to people on just a really common sense basis here for people to say, yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to come together. We need to take out the divisiveness, the conflict, and just recognize that we're all going to be Americans right now. We're all going to be Americans after the election. I think that was a really important message. Why did you feel it was important for you to go to this location at this time to do that?
Well, I think it's a big rally. I think it's a big audience that's going to get a lot of attention. And I wanted to deliver the message that we've got to start looking for unification. We're just a few days away from the election. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and we've got to decide. That's why I told him, look, if your neighbor wants to vote for the other side, then say, hey, that's okay, do it. I love you anyway. I love you as a neighbor. If you have a problem, I'll help you. You don't have to hate your neighbor because they're going to vote the other way. Don't do that. And I told the Trump campaign that's what I was going to talk about. That's what I was going to do. And if they weren't okay with that, they shouldn't have me here. And they said, no, we're okay with that. We understand that's what you want to do. We think it's an important message, and we want you to deliver it. So they knew what I was going to say, and I said it just the way I said it. Now, you know, who's going to win this election? We don't know. I think Trump has a lot of motivation and momentum right now in some states, and I think it's a toss-up at this point. But as I say, whoever wins this election will be my president, and I will support that person for president. And I hope everybody else will, too. We've got to get back to being Americans first and Republicans or Democrats second, and that's my message.
Dr. Phil, and I know you've got to run soon, but how did we get to this point in America where we can't agree to disagree? How did we get here?
You know, there's a lot of, that's a complex question and a good one, Chris, and I'm so glad that you asked it. You know, I think a lot of things have intervened, and we've gotten really divided. I think COVID divided a lot of people and created distance when we were living in isolation. And I think the internet has really blown up and caused a lot of divisiveness between people because there are messages on there that aren't fact-checked. People don't know what people really said, what they really meant. They misinterpret tone. And I think it's gotten people drawn into a part of life that they don't have as much experience at as they might their profession or their job. I certainly don't understand politics particularly well, which is why I said up front, I'm not here giving a celebrity endorsement. What the hell would that mean? What do I know about politics? I said, I'm here to talk about culture and bullying, which that is what I know. Celebrity endorsements should mean nothing. You should not be influenced by what celebrities say. You should be influenced by your own critical thinking. And I think when we stop doing that and get into identity politics, that's where we get divided because we stop thinking for ourselves.
Dr. Phil, Lindsay Keith is there at Madison Square Garden behind you. She has a question for you, too. Lindsay?
On issues, and I think that is very important.
Hey, Dr. Phil, obviously I heard the raucous crowd responding to you, but I know that you have been on the campaign trail in the swing state of Pennsylvania, a must-win state for both candidates here. What did you hear from voters, and how did that inform what you said just moments ago?
They're tired of the divisiveness. They're tired of all the bombastic rhetoric. They're good people. They're down-to-earth people. And they really want all of this bombastic rhetoric to stop. They're interested in what's going to help them have more affordability in their lives. They're interested in security, and they're interested in both parties talking with verbs in their sentences and giving solutions that they're going to pursue and stop all of the name-calling and the bickering back and forth. They said, we're not interested in what you guys think or feel about each other. We're interested in you focusing on us, and stop trying to win an argument and stop trying to solve start trying to solve our problems. We need solutions. And they're going to vote for whoever they think is focused on them.
Dr. Phil, great context and perspective as always. We know you're in a hurry to get to your next appointment. If you don't know and you're watching right now, if you want more of this conversation, please make sure you download our Merit Plus app. Dr. Phil, thank you again for the time, sir. We want to dip back in now to J.D. Vance, who's at the podium there behind Dr. Phil. Let's listen in.
8 years ago, go back 8 years, he had everything. He had fame, he had fortune, he had family, he had friends. But he gave up the easy life to save the United States of America. When they couldn't beat him, they tried to bankrupt him. When that didn't work, they tried to impeach him. When that didn't work, they tried to put him in federal prison, and when that didn't work, they even tried to kill him. But as sure as the American flag still waves, Donald Trump still stands, ready to fight, ready to win, and